Hey everyone, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. I am coming at you on a Monday. Oh my god, it's Monday. I never have days off. Maybe. My house is under construction, so everything's always crazy here, and I feel like my life is being pulled in 37 different directions. But I have been following what's been going on with Aaron Carter for a while, and I haven't said anything for a really long time because I have been trying to assess the situation and figure out from a very high level what is going on here. And I've watched a bunch of his tapes in terms of his shows on the doctors. He's been on there a couple times related to questions about his sobriety. He has been on social media making a lot of really, really, really bold statements about his brother and his sister. And there's also, there's been a lot of accusations about Nick Carter, which is Aaron's older brother and a member of the Backstreet Boys, for allegedly potentially raping women. It's not known if that happened, but multiple people, including former female singers, have come out against him and said that he has done these things to them. Aaron has since been using his platform in the last few days to call his brother out, share police reports related to his brother. But it's not just what he's saying about Nick that is troubling people. It's the fact that he has been on Instagram sharing photos of a lot of very powerful weapons that he is buying, guns. He was on the doctor last week where they took a drug test and went through all of his different medications. He said on the show, sort of in the teaser, that he had been diagnosed with schizophrenia, bipolar, multiple personality disorder. But then on the show, he admitted that many of the diagnoses were things that people had told him he had, not actual diagnoses. And he was on a ton of medication, which they looked through, many of which were benzos, which are downers, and they kind of like mellow you out, like Xanax, Ativan, those kinds of drugs. So he was on a lot of those. He also tested positive for opiates, which he claimed was related to his teeth. In 2017, when he was on the doctors, he also tested positive for opiates along with benzos. And he admitted on the show this last week that he's addicted to huffing, which is very problematic because huffing can do extensive damage to your brain. But in the middle of all of this, his mother was actually on the show too this week on the doctors. And Aaron Carter, if you're not familiar, he's the younger brother of Nick Carter, who is one of the main sort of lead singers of the 1990s, early 2000s Backstreet Boys. Nick and the Backstreet Boys had a very successful career and are still sort of touring and doing like mom rock shows, keeping women like me happy, I guess. And Nick's little brother Aaron got his start sort of on the heels of Nick's success with the Backstreet Boys. There's quite an age difference between these two, and it should be noted that Nick, when he started with the Backstreet Boys, was more in his like teens. I think he was like 14 or 15, and Aaron, for his part, started making music when he was 7, which is quite a bit different in terms of their development and their understanding of the world and what they're exposed to. He had his Aaron Carter, we all know what the Backstreet Boys have done, but Aaron Carter released his first self-debuted album in 1997 when he was 9 years old, and it sold 1 million copies. And then his second album was released in the year 2000, and that had 3 hit singles and sold over 3 million copies. So by the time he was 12 years old, Aaron Carter had multiple albums that were platinum and a ton of success. He also had 2 parents that were alcoholics and addicted to lots of things. And his mother, throughout the years, has been criticized by a lot of people for being a stage mom that put her own interest in fame and fortune above the well being of her children. There's been a lot of issues with the kids now as they've gotten older. Aaron's older sister, Leslie, she actually took her own life, died by suicide several years ago. She was diagnosed, I believe, as bipolar. That's what Aaron has said. He has a twin sister. And then there's Nick. I don't know if there's another. There's either 4 or 5 Carters. While Nick has seemingly transitioned into a life without a lot of issues, he has his own stuff that Aaron says is being covered up. But Aaron is making people really scared because of how he's acting on social media. And that's kind of what they talked to him about on the doctors this past week. They were like, why are you fighting against these trolls? Why are you going online all the time? What is your deal? Are you on drugs? This kind of stuff. And they offered Aaron an opportunity to do a full evaluation because the addiction psychologist or doctor that was on there, she believes that they don't really know what's going on with Aaron in terms of his mental health, and that in order to do that, they need to get him off all the drugs and figure out where his baseline is. And he agreed to that on the show. When that's going to happen or if that's going to happen is not known. But over the past few days, Aaron's been making a lot of really scary statements, and I'll show you a couple. So, these are some of the things that he has said. So this was the big one, is my sister raped me from the age of 10 to 13 years old. And when she wasn't on her medication, I was abused not only sexually by her, but by my first 2 backup dancers when I was 8 years old. And my brother abused me my whole life. He then shared Nick's police report of a woman accusing him of rape. He basically is saying that he is standing out and speaking out against what he calls his brother as a serial rapist. And he says, I'm so scared something's going to happen to me. I endured so much abuse from Nick that I don't know what he's capable of. If something happens, I let God lead the way, and he is with me. All of you, I was way more powerful than all of you, and I don't abuse my power. Find one police report of rape on me or domestic assault like Nick. Go on, hurry, hurry, hurry. You'll find nothing. He paid for my first rehab at Betty Ford, but shut the door in his own sister's face, Leslie, when she begged him for rehab and she overdosed a month later. Then he didn't show up for her funeral. Where were you when I was the only person in my family there for my mom? He then started sharing information about attorneys. I'm literally posting everything. How dare you all protect and attack me because I'm here for these women. I'm not dropping anything. My brother has used power and money to scare all these girls and use fans, and Marissa and Onique, it's over. So he has been going pretty hard at his brother, calling it a cover-up. His sister and brother, his twin sister and brother, actually had to file police restraining orders against Aaron because of statements his twin sister said that he made, where he actually said that he was going to hurt them. There are definitely a lot of Nick's background is not clean, but he's had a really big team behind him with the Backstreet Boys that have kept him looking a lot cleaner than he is. There's been a lot of women that have come forward with allegations against Nick. So while there might be some truth to what Aaron is saying, I think the fact of the manicness and the concerning amount of posts about this is what has got people most concerned. Then I was watching this video of Aaron actually, and I want to just show you this. And he talks about his childhood, and I think this is sort of telling and maybe an indicator more so of what's going on here.
It was so hard to get media for 7, 8-year-old, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Well, 13, 14, 15, it got a little easier. That's where I really started blowing up. Then by the time I turned 15, my fucking parents divorced, and my whole life came crashing down. And then I started doing like crazy, like I was doing ecstasy and taking like way, having keg parties down in the Keys, down in fucking, and then, because my mom was gone, and I was just getting into a lot of trouble. Both of my parents were alcoholics. So addiction runs in our family, and I'm 2 years sober. I smoke weed, but it's medicinal. And that's my take on it, and I'm fine. Apparently I can have a gun, so not crazy, there's nothing wrong with me, I've dedicated my life to you guys for 23 years. Never went to high school, I don't need a pity party or anything, but I never went to fucking high school, like, you guys all did that. How was it? I don't know. I never took summers off, never had summer vacations. How was it? I don't know. Did you work every single day from the age of 7 years old to about 15? And then have a break from 15 to 18, then you go and buy with your trust fund money, a bunch of music gear. And
so my point in sharing that is he's talking a lot about how he started becoming famous when he was 7 years old, and then by the time he was 15, it went all up in smoke because his parents got divorced. He didn't put out, he was a really cute little kid, kind of like Justin Bieber, even maybe a little bit cuter than that. And his fame, he couldn't continue to look that same little boy that he became when he was 7 years old. And it was gone by 2015. His parents were alcoholics. He was left alone all the time. His mother was constantly with his older brother, Nick. And there just wasn't a lot around Nick, around Aaron at this time to sort of keep him safe, admitting that he got into a lot and saw a lot that maybe he shouldn't have seen as a child. Which got me thinking about what are the effects of childhood fame, because we see this a lot with people like Aaron. And I am not sharing this video to trash Aaron by any means. I actually have a lot of compassion for him, and I feel like he has become a victim of his circumstance. And he's also the product of his parents that put their interests of fame and money ahead of the needs of him as a child. And that made me... There's a lot of parents that do this, especially on YouTube, but I started doing some digging and found a couple articles, which I've actually linked into the description, and I think will give you a little bit better understanding of some of the issues that are concerning for a child star. So this was an article that was actually in USA Today, and they say, if parents are able to keep other aspects of the child's life controlled, normal, and there are continued boundaries and rules, the kids will do well. If you don't have a really stable parental unit that's setting the limits ahead of time, and then the roles get flipped and easily and the child becomes the parent, they're not ready for that responsibility, and your kids spin out a little bit. So when we think about what he is saying, he basically said that he had his parents around, but he was basically making the money, and they were both addicts, and therefore not providing him the kind of structure that he would have needed as a child and the normalcy of a child, the normalcy that would be needed for childhood. So there was some other things that I thought were interesting in this article. Another was that childhood is about finding out who you are and being able to relate to others, and those things are harder when you're famous. The amount of public scrutiny makes it hard on kids to do that. They can't mess up, and so they have to adopt a very self-assured, precocious identity very quickly. And then this they also said the younger a child is when he or she gets into the business, the more likely it will be damaging because their needs are not met. The basic needs of childhood have nothing to do with working or the entertainment industry. A young child doesn't even understand what the entertainment industry is. So when fame becomes the goal and making money becomes the goal and working becomes the goal for the child, they're missing out on all the developmental aspects of what it means to be a child. And he said it in that video. I didn't get to go to high school. I didn't get to go to prom. I didn't have summer vacations. I was always working. That's a problem. And of course, that's going to have issues on a child's development. Now, there are plenty of child stars that are able to get through it without going or imploding, but a lot of them do. Aaron's not alone. There's other stars like Amanda Bynes, Lindsay Lohan, Justin Bieber, Miley Cyrus, Drew Barrymore, Brooke Shields, Macaulay Culkin, Corey Feldman, Corey Haim, that have had very public meltdowns because of the fame that they received, and have all had parents that maybe weren't protecting them and providing them a normalcy or balance. Other stars that have had easier transitions, like Natalie Portman, Scarlett Johansson, and Leonardo DiCaprio, had parents that kept things at home pretty normal and made sure that when they were working, it was about fun and not necessarily about having a job. Natalie Portman actually took time off and went to college and had normal experiences. And that helped her transition to her adult work. So it all depends on the parents in these situations, and his parents were drinking. So other things that I thought were interesting from these articles were that money is a big draw for these parents, but in this particular industry, there's a very strong allure because of the celebrity and the attention of the potential famous. And this comes from Nancy Carlson Page, who wrote a book on childhood, The Proven Roadmap for Raising Confident, Creative, Compassionate Kids. The younger a child is when she gets into the business, the more the likelihood they'll be damaging because their needs will not be met. And then an article on psychology and on Psychology Today wrote, because of the nature of show business, child actors are exposed to drugs, alcohol, sex at a very early age, and at the same time, young actors must constantly cope with rejection, jealousy, self-scrutiny, obsessive thoughts, and the nonstop need to be perfect. These children are at very high risk of becoming emotionally unstable and becoming drug, alcohol, or sex abusers. Children at different ages display developmental changes that might indicate they are at risk. Those between the ages of 2 and 8 might exhibit the following signs of stress: regression, depression, crying, anxiety, clinging, and temper tantrums. Indications that teens are troubled include poor grades, changing of friends, isolation, distancing from family, oversleeping, drug abuse, eating disorders. Is it possible to be a child actor and develop normally? Only if the parents do what is in the best interest of the child's development and well-being. So the issue primarily is that this all comes back down to parenting, and doesn't sound like Aaron had the best parents to guide him and make the best decision, and missed out on a lot of the very key aspects of being a kid. We see this also with stars like Michael Jackson. I mean, look at what Michael Jackson did. He was perpetually stuck as like that 7-year-old. And the younger the child is when they become famous, the more likely they are to have ongoing issues in their life. They say that fame in childhood is akin to an extremely traumatic experience. Kids don't understand fame, and therefore they get addicted to the adulation and having all these people love them. But at the same time, because they're growing up, they're not allowed to make the same kind of mistakes that you and I would make. And a lot of them, when they get into trouble, are at the age of teens, when most teens, like you or I, were making a shit ton of mistakes, but we didn't have the whole world like dissecting everything that we were doing. Aaron, in this case, has a lot of issues that are pretty consistent with what they see with child stars, where he's unstable, he has drug and alcohol issues, but that's also genetic. Both of his parents are alcoholics. His father is now passed on, and his mother recently went into rehab. I really feel for Aaron, and I hope I hope that the coverage related to him will be more from a place of compassion than watching another person sort of melt down and making fun of them, because Aaron is, for all intents and purposes, a victim of his circumstance. And while he is an adult now, he clearly needs help, and he needs people to help him take steps to get better. But I also think that we should not ignore the things that he is saying about his brother, because there could be truth to what he's saying about Nick. With that said, I'll do some more digging into what he has to say about Nick and do that in another stream. And so maybe we can dissect if there's any truth to what he says. I'd love to hear what your take is about Aaron, what your thoughts are. Have you been concerned? Do you not care? Do you think he just needs to grow up? I try to come at this from a place of compassion, and I would hope that you do too. All right, you guys, I'll be back later with more. Bye.